It is the 30th of June, the year 2023, and I'm honored to be bringing you the news on the last day of the 6th month of the year, known as June. Reminds me recently, about 3 months ago, I made a new friend by the name June, a person I'm really fond of nowadays. So we have a lot lined up for you in this particular bulletin. And of course, this is still the very last day for you who has not filed your returns. KRA will be on your necks if you don't do anything in the next 3 hours. So we have a lot lined up for you in this particular bulletin tonight. Matters devolution, matters finance bill. You don't want to miss these particular conversations. We have an interesting conversation also coming up on climate justice. You don't want to miss that particular conversation. And another conversation about a child's brain and how we should take care of that. But first, let's take a look at the highlights. Supreme Court orders suspension of implementation of the 2023 Finance Act. Governor Anne Waiguru gives annual State of Devolution address as President Ruto signs to law county allocation of revenue bill and equalization fund. All government services to be digitized by December 2023 as the President unveils over 5,000 digital government services. And EPRA releases new petroleum prices affected by the new 16% VAT on fuel.
This is KUTV Primetime News with Mutegi K. Martin.
And of course, EVELYN LANGAT is with us in the sign language interpretation tonight. My name is MUTEGI K. Martin. Welcome to the broadcast. Now, the Supreme Court has ordered the suspension of implementation of the 2023 Finance Act following a request by the Busia Senator Okia Omtata. Omtata went to court on the 3rd of this month to challenge the finance bill, which currently stands as finance law after being signed by President Ruto on Monday earlier this week. The case will be heard next month on the 5th of July. And the Council of Governors Chairperson Anne Waiguru has today delivered the 10th annual State of Devolution address in Safari Park Hotel, Nairobi, which addressed the highlights, the gains, the challenges and opportunities in devolution in Kenya. Waiguru has highlighted the importance of leveraging data-driven decision-making and evidence-based planning to ensure effective policy formulation and resource allocation at the county level. 2.9 trillion shillings have so far been allocated to the counties since the start of devolution.
As devolution marks a 10-year anniversary, the chairperson of the Council of Governors, Anne Waiguru, has delivered a speech at the annual State of Devolution address in Safari Park Hotel, Nairobi, where she addressed the achievements, improvements, challenges, and opportunities in devolution.
Government representatives, development partners, members of the press, fellow Kenyans, good afternoon. I will begin my speech today with a Moroccan proverb that says, "There is no beauty but the beauty of action."
In the agriculture sector, Waiguru said that counties have invested enormously despite challenges in terms of reviving cash crops, livestock commercialization, animal vaccination, providing seeds, fertilizers, and other farm inputs, thus increasing production. She also added that counties are working on improving water and sanitization.
My address today will be a story of the collective actions that counties have taken in this financial year and the impact those actions have had on service delivery.
On matters of health, county governments have invested in the recruitment and training of healthcare professionals, procurement of medical equipment and supplies, and infrastructure development, leading to enhanced service delivery at the local level. Furthermore, in the trade sector, she mentioned that there has been a growth in small enterprises in the last 1 year. Governor Waiguru also stated a lot of achievements in the climate and road sector and further said that there has been a collaboration between the county and national government where they work on implementing several services including trade, transport and agriculture. Jackie Nasiran, KU TV.
And talking about money, President William Ruto has today led the signing of County Allocation of Revenue Bill and Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill 2023 into law. This comes after the bill passed through the National Assembly and the Senate. In the new law, counties will get an increment of 15 billion shillings. The presidential assent to the two bills now paves way for counties to access funds in the new financial year that begins tomorrow.
In an event that took place today morning in State House, President William Ruto signed into law the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2023 and Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill 2023. The County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2023 was passed by the Senate on 6th of June and later approved by the National Assembly on 21st, while the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill was passed by the Senate on 15th and subsequently passed by the National Assembly on 21st. In the new financial year, which begins on 1st of July, county governments will receive a total of 385.4 billion, being an increase from the current 370 billion shillings. Nairobi County will receive the highest share with a total of 20.7 billion. The revenue bill was passed without amendments in the National Assembly and the Senate, despite the attempts by the senators from the opposition to amend the bill and increase the county allocation to shillings 407 billion.
Then the money and the constitution is quite clear that it's supposed to be sent to counties. The constitution says that money shall not be delayed or reduced at all. It has to be sent immediately. So I pose the question. We're here, all of us are here supporting this bill so that our counties can be able to get money. But do we ever ask questions as to why we should not penalize Treasury for delaying the disbursement of money into counties?
The two bills will help the 47 county governments to access funds to run and manage the devolved units in the new financial year. Jacob Okello, KU TV.
President William Ruto has unveiled over 5,000 digitized government services at KICC, fulfilling a promise by the Kenya Kwanza government in December that by the end of June, 5,000 out of 7,000 government services will be accessed digitally. Henceforth, Kenyans can now access and pay for government services through ecitizen.go.ke.
It's a promise fulfilled after the Kenya Kwanza government today unveiled over 5,000 digitized government services. All payments for government services will henceforth be made on ecitizen.go.ke via the government's pay bill number 22222.
6 months ago, I made a commitment to the people of Kenya that we will have 5,000 government services digitized and available online to the people of Kenya by 30th June this year. I am very happy that today 5,084 services have been digitized, completed, and are now available.
A number of government services have been bundled under the eCitizen. Services from various ministries will be provided in the portal. The Ministry of Health portal is aimed at eliminating NHIF fraud. The Ministry of National Security portal will streamline the access to digital OB. The portal for Ministry of Lands will enable land searches to combat land theft. Ministry of Agriculture that will benefit farmers, among others. Aim of government's payments going digital is to increase revenue collection, minimizing the cost of collection, enhancing service delivery, and sealing loopholes.
For us to get rid of that, it is part of our plan to make sure that citizens don't have to travel, they don't have to meet anybody, they don't have to bribe nobody.
President Ruto has also promised to ensure that before the end of the year, Kenyans will be able to access smartphones at a price of 5,400 Kenyan shillings for them to benefit from eCitizen.
And we are making it easier for people to access smartphones. As I have said, we are working with our telcos, and in August, we should be able to have access to a 4G-enabled phone that is affordable for the majority of the people of Kenya.
eCitizen portal will see majority of Kenyans escape from spending long waiting hours at government offices seeking services. Lynette Maina, KUTV.
Now let's go to a story that has been turning heads, and the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority has released new prices for petroleum products affected by the new 16% VAT on the fuel in the finance bill assented by President Ruto on Monday. The petrol rates have now hit a record high at 195 per litre, with matatu and boda operators threatening to raise fares. The new prices will take effect from midnight July 1st.
That fuel prices will jump so high was certain as day followed night after President William Ruto assented to the finance bill on Monday earlier this week, paving way for the institution of 16% fuel VAT. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority has, with effect midnight today, published new rates for petroleum products. With effect midnight today, petrol will now retail in the range of 194.87 to 196.55 shillings, inclusive of 77.94 of tax and levies. Diesel will jump to 180 shillings to the 161 it retailed previously, after an increment of 12 shillings VAT. In Nairobi and its environs, kerosene will retail at 174 from the current 161.48 shillings. The new prices are an indication of fuel price increment by averagely 12 shillings or 8% of the current rates. The rising of fuel prices at the pump has dominated the finance bill debate in the recent past, Kenyans taking discontent with the introduced tariffs, saying that a fuel price increment has direct implication to the cost of living.
On the 16% VAT of fuel, literally, I don't know the reason as why they proposed that, because even the 8% now, as the common 190, we are feeling the heat, and it's just still at 8%. Now this 16% that has already been passed, you know, the one thing about fuel, no fuel cuts across all sectors. So one thing, it will affect many sectors, and but our fear is that even after this cash is raised, even after this money is raised, will it be in safe hands? Because we can decide to feel the pinch, but we can decide to accept it.
Tungeomba ingewezekana hiyo VAT ikuwe tu ile ya kawaida tu, hiyo bill isiende, yani waangalie wafanye some amendment za vitu zingine. Juu kama mafuta ni kitu very essential kwa vitu za kawaida, za vitu za hii Kenya. Juu ukipandisha mafuta kila kitu imepanda, huwezi kufanya kitu yote, bei imepanda, yani inapandisha kila kitu.
The worst hit are matatu, taxi and boda operators who have threatened to hike fares to cushion themselves from the rising cost of fuel. The opposition on its part demonstrated its reservations with the law, planning to call demonstrations as a result. Speaking on Tuesday in the Kamukunji rally earlier this week, Azimio leader Raila Odinga has called Kenyans to embark on austerity measures like walking on foot to cushion themselves from the fuel price hikes. Munene Weru, KUTV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Munene Weru. Now, Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, has proposed an increment of 14% in the payment of state officers for the next 2 years, starting next month. The increment will affect the salaries of the president, deputy president, cabinet secretaries, and legislators. If approved, the officials are set to enjoy significant relief from the impact of the persistently high inflation of the cost of living. Salaried workers, part-time workers, and workers in the informal sectors are, however, exempted from the proposal, which has been rejected by President William Ruto. Take a look.
In the Salaries and Remuneration Commission proposal, state officials including President, Deputy President, Cabinet Secretaries and Members of Parliament will receive a 14% salary increment for 2 years beginning next month. The increase is meant to cushion the senior state officials against the rising cost of living in the country. According to the proposal, the salary of the president will rise from 1.4 million to 1.6 million, while that of the deputy president will rise from 1.2 million to 1.4 million. Cabinet secretaries will receive 1.05 million, in addition to the current 924,000. Members of parliament will have their salaries increased from 710,000 to 769,201. President William Ruto has, however, opposed the recommendation and proposed adjustment on the civil servant salaries of up to between 7 and 10% with an aim of reducing the pay gap.
All right, it's time for us to take our first short break right here on KUTV Primetime News. I don't know what comes to your mind when you hear the word climate justice. Don't worry if you got confused. We're going to be making sure you get to understand what that is and how you can become a part of the change that we so need. We take a short break. We'll be coming back with a special conversation on just about that.
Kenyatta University will hold its 53rd graduation ceremony on Friday, 21st July 2023 at the main campus along Thika Superhighway. KUTV will provide live coverage of the graduation ceremony from 8 a.m. The graduation ceremony will also be streamed live on KUTV, KU website, Lola app, and all KU social media platforms. For more information, please contact the Office of the Registrar Academic on 020-870-3092 or 0786-335-111 or visit the KU website on www.ku.ac.ke. Kenyatta University, transforming higher education, enhancing lives. Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audio-visual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
Kenya tunajaribu hapa ni kujaribu interbreed also to develop our own osim breed ya kondoo. Na saa zingine chumvi tunanunua kwa maduka ama naenda pahali ambao tunakwanga solid. Tunaangalia wanyama wa msituni. Hao ndio wanajua pahali chumvi iko. Wakienda pahali ambao unaona wanakula mchanga, tunatoa ile ya juu ndio tusilete maugonjwa, alafu tunachimba ile ya chini kwa sababu hapo iko na chumvi. Tunawaletea hao na wanakula na wananona.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with Mutegi K. Martin.
All right, welcome back to KUTV Primetime News. You're joining us for the second part of our conversation tonight, which is indeed a conversation that revolves around climate justice. And of course, if you have had a hard time looking at it, I want to read something to you courtesy of UNEP, where our guests will take it even deeper. But something interesting for the UNEP, where climate justice is a term used for framing global warming as an ethical and political issue, not just an environmental issue or a physical issue. That's all I have to say for now, because my guests are here and they are loaded with information, and more specifically about the Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice. That is coming next week from Monday, from the 3rd, that is Monday the 3rd of July, all the way to the 15th of July. The chief guest who is opening the ceremony will be the Minister for Education, the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Ezekiel Machogu, to make sure that we get to launch this amazing platform where people come together to talk about climate justice. And I'm joined by very interesting people who are going to be helping me to understand what is happening in this in the space of climate justice, and and global warming, and how it has shaped what we have right now and what we need to do to start undoing. I'm joined by Charles Mwangi, who is in this particular setting right now, who is the head of programs and research at PACJA, and I will be joined by Mana Omar. I don't know if she's available online already, who is a climate scientist. I can see her already. Mana, how are you this evening? If you can hear me. Mana Omar, if you can hear me, kindly enable your sound. But even as we prepare for that, Charles Mwangi, Head of Programs and Research at PACJA, it's a pleasure to have you and an honor to have you in this particular sitting tonight. And let's go deep and let's just go into it as we wait for Mana to join the particular conversation as far as audio is concerned. Let's get to understand what is PACJA, what is Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice, and what have you done so far, and what is the importance of this, especially when you're pushing people who are going to take this to the next level.
So thank you so much, and thank you so much for hosting me in this show. We are, of course, very, very glad of the collaboration that we've had with KUTV in the last editions of Summer School. And I want to say that Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance is actually a coalition of civil societies in Africa. So we have 51 countries in Africa, and we have more than 1,500 civil society organizations within this alliance. Now, we came to be in 2008 in Johannesburg, South Africa, when like-minded, African, colleagues, came together, and they thought it's important really to unpack the entire, conversation and concept of climate justice and interpret it from the African perspective, because Africa is one of the continents that is really mostly impacted by the impacts of climate change, even though it is a continent that contributes least to the global greenhouse gases emissions. And we thought, therefore, it's important, to have, a civil society, network that really call for climate justice, in which case, of course, we talk about those who have contributed to this challenge should actually be able to take lead in terms of addressing this particular challenge. So we've been there, therefore, for all those years, and our work, of course, spans across, various constituencies. We have our sub-national, platforms in the countries. We have national platforms operating at that particular level, but we also have regional components of our work, where, of course, we work with other Pan-African institutions, like the African Union, like the Pan-African Parliament, and several others, including the African Development Bank, to really push for policies, push for, issues that are going to help us in terms of addressing climate change and calling for justice, for the African people first and foremost.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that particular introduction. And maybe as we move forward in this particular conversation, something that is very eye-catching is your tagline for this particular. I don't know if it's for this particular year or is it for Nairobi Summer School. You're gonna shed more light onto that, but connecting ideas and shaping narratives as far as this climate justice is concerned, and you are very particular in empowering the youth as spearheaders of this particular movement. How is that going, and how exactly are you bringing the youth together and connecting the ideas that come from all over Africa and pushing this narrative forward?
Thank you so much. Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice really is a very innovative idea that we come up with as a Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. And this idea was conceptualized in 2019. Upon realization that Africa, has a majority of its population really, or the biggest proportion of its population, comprises of young people. But these young people in the continent, they don't have the right mentorship. These young people, they remain an asset that is not utilized, in terms of bringing or catalyzing, development, within Africa. And we thought because there's that particular gap, we needed to empower our young people, particularly give them the understanding of climate justice in our own context. And that's why we're talking about shaping, narratives. Because we have to tell our story, first and foremost, as African people. Because they say the wearer of the shoe is the one who knows where it pinches most. And therefore, in 2019, we thought of coming up with this particular program, where then we'd expose our young people, with the right concepts, around climate justice, in terms of basically what is a global, discourse around climate change. What are some of the local probably solutions so that they can actually be able to take up and probably be able to bring the change, that is needed, so that we don't see them as victims only, but we also see them as change agents. And in 2019, we thought that probably would actually be able to plan that particular school and implement it, in 2020. But COVID-19, came around, and we were unable to actually launch, Nairobi Summer School in 2020 as we had planned. And therefore, our first edition, our inaugural Summer School on Climate Justice, therefore, was hosted in this very university, in 2021. And I want to say that this is really a partnership, that brings together, partners from across, the globe. Universities, from across the globe. Of course, we have Kenyatta University, as our main partner here. We have University of Nairobi. We have University of West Cape. We have several other universities across Africa, but also beyond. And we also bring together, experts, from various sectors, because we don't want to hold this summer school as just an academic, a normal academic, sort of an exercise. We bring in even practitioners in the field, because it's more or less a mentoring, sort of a school. And I want to tell you that we have seen a lot of fruits coming from this particular school. We were in Germany just a few weeks ago, actually about 2 weeks ago, and I can tell you, majority of the young people that were attending, SBI meetings that happened in Bonn, in June, were really, the graduates of our school. Some of them are actually now negotiating for their countries. We have a case of a girl by the name Saone in Botswana, who is actually now negotiating on agriculture, and she's a beneficiary of the second edition of Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice. So it is really a transformational kind of a school, and I want to say that this year we received an overwhelming, number of applications. We actually got almost 2,000 applications, and the interest, span beyond Africa. Actually, we had 73 students from 73 countries applying for that. And therefore, you realize, of course, majority will be from Africa, but we've also been able to take some students from part of the Global South, but also part of Global North, because we believe it's important really to build a movement and a strong movement of young people who are actually spearheading, climate justice discourse in Africa, because we have that, the demographic advantage.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for that. Allow me to loop in Mana Omar, who is now joining us virtually. And Mana, if you can hear me tonight, welcome to the broadcast. Mana Omar is a climate scientist, and we need to see later in this conversation how science actually comes into play. She's also the founder and CEO of something very interesting that is called Springs of the Arid and Semi-Arid lands. She's going to be telling us all what that is all about. But even as you do that, what are the challenges? Charles has been sharing with us the engagement and how PACJA is engaging the young people in this particular movement. What are the challenges and opportunities that you have discovered in the process of doing this?
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, so allow me to just ask what you've asked about the challenges and opportunities. Is it for the summer school?
Yes, for the summer school and the overall engagement of the young people as a huge part of this particular movement.
Okay, so I'll start by saying that I was part of the summer school last year as the second cohort, and I see this as a very great opportunity for youths to learn because using my example, like when I was starting or joining this summer school, I had I wasn't really equipped with the knowledge around climate justice very well. I just had, basic knowledge on this. And after that, after the summer school, I was motivated to move forward and pursue and even learn more about climate justice because it was like an eye-opener. Mm-hmm. So I can say PACJA is offering an opportunity for youths to discover themselves in the field of climate justice or climate change at large. And also the opportunities that are there is that, you see, PACJA has supported a number of youths in this same climate justice summer school, where after the summer school, they've supported different people or youths to pursue or to further make their work successful. Like we know other youths who are using music to to move forward the narrative of climate justice. Like myself, I'm working with communities in the arid and semi-arid lands through an NGO that I founded, and it really made me stronger. So I can say those are some of the opportunities, and I don't know if there's any challenge that I can really echo from this, because apart from having youths participate in person, there's also opportunities for people to participate online, and I could see that from the time I was in the summer school. So yeah, I think that's what I can echo about that. Thank you, and back to you.
All right, thank you so much for that detailed experience, even as member of the cohort 2 of the Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice. Now we go back to you, Bwana Charles, and as the head of programs and research, I believe you're one of the people who are mostly involved in the advocacy and the discussions around this particular issue of climate justice and involving 51 countries, as you have put it. What are some of the things that have come up even as you engage? What are some of the policies you have formulated as you continue to engage member states and general members of your movement?
Thank you so much. Climate change is actually a discourse really that is global, but that can also be seen, from the local context. And you realize that a lot of work, especially around, policies, is multifaceted. We have been working very closely, of course, with local, governments. Like in Kenya, for example, we have a county as a local jurisdiction. And we've been supporting a number of counties, in terms of coming up with their climate policies or their climate laws, to ensure that at least climate issues are actually entrenched, within their systems and their systems of laws. And again, to ensure that they are also, allocating some resources, to address climate change, from their budgets. And several countries are doing that. And the same is also replicated in many other countries, across Africa. But also at a national level, it's important to realize that countries, of course, have got some commitments, and global, commitments, to address climate change. And I want to talk about one document, for example, that we call, the NDCs. or the national determined contribution, which is a blueprint, submitted by every country at the UNFCCC, indicating the strategies and the measures that that country is planning from their own, internally informed, sort of decisions, to cut the emissions to a certain particular percentage. But again, the strategies we want to put in place in terms of addressing, the entire concept of climate change. So our work, therefore, first and foremost was to support countries in terms of coming up with proper NDCs documents. We've been involved also in terms of reviewing the NDCs, because every 5 years, of course, there is a review of the same. The first review actually happened in 2020 for many countries, and our platforms in the countries were really deeply engaged in terms of contributing to issues that are critical and that we think are important in those particular documents. But also at national level, most of the countries have also what we call national climate change action plans. They also what they call adaptation plans, and all these documents are very, very important in terms of providing the legal framework and policy framework that is necessary for us to roll out climate change initiatives. But it's important to note that there's a difference between having good policies and implementation part of it. And we are always accused of that. In Africa, we come up with very nice policies, Kenya being a very good example. But when it comes now to implementation and rolling out those particular proposals and those particular policies, it becomes very, very, very difficult. And that is not just in Africa. We have seen this also in the global arena, where countries commit, particularly the developed countries. We have seen a lot of commitments, and one of the common ones is the 100 billion commitment, which has never been honored. Commitment to provide climate finance to support the countries that are most affected by impact of climate change, for them to be able to build their resilience. But that money has not always been forthcoming. You realize that within the global arena, there is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which is the forum under which countries and parties that are signatories, and most of the countries in the world are actually under that, come together, and every year, of course, they negotiate issues regarding climate change and how to come up with the strategies and mechanisms of ensuring that we have come up with strategies that are going to help us in terms of addressing climate change. But then you realize in those negotiations, Africa is always at a disadvantage. And of course, many other developing countries, because the developed world, even though they have an obligation, to support in ensuring that the countries that are developing, have been cushioned against the impact of climate change, you realize that there is always, a lack of that political goodwill. And therefore, you realize that in most of the themes of the negotiations, including adaptation, which is very, very critical for Africa, there hasn't been a lot of attention in terms of doubling finance that is required to support adaptation. And you realize there's a very big gap between what is actually needed on the ground and what is actually available. And even what is available, it becomes also very difficult to access the same.
Thank you very much for that. And of course, as you spoke about policy, I feel I want to ask a question to Mana, who I believe is still listening to us in this particular conversation. Mana, I want to loop you in on the part of policy and how it comes into contact with science. You're a climate scientist yourself, and I'm sure you're still part of the advocacy team that is really pushing Nairobi Summer School for Climate Justice and PACJA's work in general to the next level. Scientists, to some extent, want to handle things their own way, but we need advocacy. Where do the two meet, and how do they work together to ensure that the information we get from this side and the research we do from this other side get to push the narrative forward?
Thank you so much. So what I can say is that personally, as a climate activist, on a personal level, that is, along the scientific part or the scientist in me, because I'm just a recent graduate from school and all that, I can say that advocacy strongly relies on science and evidence from research. So I think science and research, as you mentioned, is really critical in informing advocacy, because even as climate activists, we go to climate conferences, or we are present in these climate decision-making processes, to push for certain agendas that we think are critical for our own countries. So, for instance, discussions around loss and damage. Most of us, like me, for instance, I was at the Bonn International Climate Change Conference, and we were pushing forward the narrative of indigenous pastoral communities who we feel are excluded from climate decision spaces, yet being most affected by climate change. Another aspect of climate justice, we need to
Right, we seem to have lost Mana Omar as she completed her point. Bona Charles, time is not with us, and we are coming to the very close of this particular conversation. I just want to give you 1 minute to tell us, the cohort 3 is here with us already, starting from Monday. What are your expectations, and what are you looking forward to, to see come to fruition?
Thank you so much. This cohort 3 is perhaps going to be the most exciting cohort. We have more than 300 students who are attending this course physically in KU for 2 weeks. And we have another 500 that will be joining, from the various places in the world, virtually. And like I mentioned earlier, you can imagine our core, which we did not run for a very long time, attracted close to 2,000, applicants. And what is interesting is that the applicants came from all over the world, both from the global north and global south. And we had a difficult task, really, of selecting, and shortlisting really candidates that would actually come in for that particular course. So you can see there is a lot of interest. In Africa, it's only about 4 countries which didn't apply. So you can imagine how effective this process has been, and the interest, this school has actually sparked, among the young people, which is to us is very, very exciting, and meaning that we really have a lot of work to do in terms of making sure that we reach as many young people as possible. So we start on Monday. We have the symposium that is coming up on Monday, and the Minister of Education, Ezekiel Machogu, will be the chief guest. And of course, now from there, we of course have 2 weeks, of engagement. Now we are looking forward, to engage with these young people. We have actually selected our resource persons very, very carefully. And they're also coming from across, the globe, and most of them are seasoned, activists, we and experts, in the discourse of climate change. And we really want to be as practical as possible. We want to produce yet another cohort, of activists, in Africa, and we believe that whatever we're doing is really going a long way in terms of supporting, our young people and building, their capacities, because they're the leaders not of tomorrow, but of today. But going forward, we're also thinking about how can we probably be able to immortalize, this particular course, by embedding it, in the school curriculums, at tertiary level, but also at elementary level, because it's important to start, early enough. Because climate change is here with us. And from the look of things, it may continue if we don't, for quite some time if we don't act. And we have our young, people, and these young people from Africa particularly, I believe they are the ones who are going to provide the solutions that we need, in terms of going forward. They're the ones who are going to really ensure that Africa really gets justice, in matters climate change. So we welcome all, to follow, the deliberations and how the school is going to roll out. But we believe and we hope really this is going to be much better. We have taken our lessons from the first 2 cohorts, and this can only be better than the last 2.
Amazing. I can attest to that because I attended your first event. I actually covered your first event, and I'm looking forward to seeing how cohort 3 turns out. So thank you so much for joining us in this particular wonderful conversation. That is Charles Mwangi. Sorry for calling you Charles Minor as we began the conversation. I have a friend who is called Charles Mwangi Minor.
I have a son by the name Minor, so it's still okay.
Ah, that's good. That's wonderful. So we come to the close of the conversation. Thanks to Mana Omar, who was able to join us. Can you tell us your final parting shot, even as we end this conversation? Kindly, Mana Omar, I'm told you're back. Kindly engage your sound.
Yeah, I've unmuted. Can you hear me?
Amazing. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm really sorry for the intermittent network because we're at the village doing fieldwork, so I'm trying to juggle in between the available network. So I think my parting shot would be like, PACJ is really doing a good work with the Nairobi Summer School on climate justice. And I think it's a really brilliant idea to not only for seasoned activists, but rather for grassroots activists who are working and doing incredible job on the grassroots level with the most affected communities. And I think they deserve this space. And thank you to the organizing team, and thank you for also having us here.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's Mana Omar, climate scientist, founder of SASAL, SASAL. You can Google that. It's Springs of Arid and Semi-Arid Lands. Perfect way to end this particular conversation. Thank you so much to Charles Mwangi, Baba Maina, for coming to the conversation tonight. Thank you so much for staying tuned and allowing us to have this conversation. Climate justice, it concerns you, it concerns me, it concerns all of us. We take a very short break right here. We come back with more. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Kenyatta University will hold its 52nd graduation ceremony on Friday, 16th December 2022 at the main campus along the Thika Superhighway. KUTV will provide live coverage of the graduation ceremony from 8.
Maelfu na maelfu ya wahamiaji wakiwa na watoto kutoka nchi za Amerika ya Kati wanaendelea kuwasili kwenye mpaka kati ya Marekani na Mexico.
But folks, I'm going. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ni habari kutoka pembe zote duniani.
People pass vuguvugu. People pass ni idea.
Tazidi ananyonya, hanyonyi vizuri, anakuwa hayuko comfortable.
Jeshi la Jamhuri ya Kidemokrasia ya Kongo linapambana na waasi wa ADF.
Kwa sasa wanatoa wito kwa mashirika, makampuni na vile vituo vya uchukuzi.
Mambo mengi yatakwenda kama yalivyopangwa.
Hapa ni kuna mmoja wa viongozi wa chama cha wavuvi katika eneo hili.
Zaidi tunajaribu kuwapa chanjo ili ina boost ama inanyanyua kinga ya mwili, ndio inaenda kupelekea kupambana na virusi.
Ni dunia ni leo, Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili, Washington DC.
Focus on Health is a show that creates awareness on matters health and informs you on various diseases, their causes, treatment, prevention, coping, and support. So join me, Boari Michelle, every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. only on KUTV. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at KUTV Focus on Health on Facebook and also on YouTube, and Health Focus on Instagram, because your health is your wealth. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audiovisual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
You are watching KUTV Primetime News with MUTEGI K. Martin.
Welcome back once again to KUTV Primetime News, where we're here to inform you on what's happening in the country and beyond our borders. Just a correction on our story that we ran our first story actually, where I had said that the Supreme Court had ordered suspension of the implementation of the 2023 finance law, and that is not the case. So it is the High Court that has ordered the suspension of the implementation of the 2023 Finance Act, following a request by Busia Senator Okia Omtata. We shall be giving you more developments on that particular story in our subsequent bulletins. Tomorrow, which is Saturday, we join you with, and you of course join us as well with Mizizi Weekendi at 6:30 and Weekend Live at 9 p.m. Now, we come back with a very interesting conversation. Tonight is a night of conversations, and you know we love to talk about health on Fridays, and we're talking about the wellness and the well-being of the infants, and we're going to start even way before infancy. Our guest will be getting to help us understand that in much more detail, but we're talking about, we've dubbed our conversation tonight Inside a Child's Brain, and seeing how we can actually be able to shape the mental health of children way before they're brought into this world, and even as they continue to grow. And I'm being joined by Dr. Teresa Moma, who is the National Coordinator, ACD Network for Kenya. She's also a senior lecturer here at Kenyatta University, and this is where the ACD Network of Kenya is hosted, or would I say the headquarters, joining us this particular in this particular conversation. And before we get to talk about much about that, I want to read something very interesting. According to parentingforbrain.com, the formative years are the time period between 0 and 8 years when the brain and neurobiological development are the fastest after birth. What happens to a child in these years can affect their physical development, mental development, and success in life. Now I have your attention with the success part. Tonight we look at the brain of younger ones, and joining me for this particular discussion once again is Dr. Teresa Moma, National Coordinator at ACD Network for Kenya. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Martin. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and have this conversation.
Asante sana.
Karibu.
Would you kindly elaborate some of the things that I might have left about you or the organization?
Okay, my name is Dr. Teresa Moma. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Early Childhood Studies, Kenyatta University. I'm also the National Coordinator, ECD Network for Kenya, which is hosted in the Department of Early Childhood Studies and Special Needs Education. And this is a network that was formed to demystify where the public sees universities as places of learning. But the network brings together policymakers, program implementers, researchers, academia, UN agencies, together to discuss issues affecting children and to influence policy and programming for children to ensure that children have an environment that is nurturing, to ensure that development and the growth is happening in a good environment. Yes.
Elaborate, I love it. And now that we're talking about children and their development,
yes,
I love to go back to the prenatal stage where the baby has not been born yet. And scientists have been careful to tell us that whatever we do in that particular stage when a mother is pregnant with a child can and will affect the baby, positively or negatively. And of course, a number of players in that particular field are involved. The pregnant mothers themselves, the healthcare providers, and even ourselves who are around the pregnant mothers, the relatives, the families, the friends, the neighbors. What can we do, and what do we do that really affects the development of the brain and the wellness of the mental capacity of a baby, even before they are born?
Thank you so much, Martin, for that question. Many times we are very keen when the baby is born. That's when we start celebrating. But we are supposed to be even celebrating from the time the baby is conceived. And when the baby is conceived, many things happen around that baby, but through the mother. And the baby, in terms of getting his nutrition or her nutrition, it is through the mother. So what that means is that the mother should be in a conducive environment, psychologically, health-wise, so that she is able to have the health she requires in terms of good nutrition, maybe going for antenatal clinics, so that the child is taken good care of. The child will get his nutrition through the mother. So the mother needs to be fed well. But sometimes some mothers do not get that conducive environment, maybe because of stress, maybe because of socioeconomic challenges. So because of that, the child is also indirectly affected. And that is where you realize that if the mother is not feeding well, the child is also not getting the nutrients that he or she requires. And therefore, as the baby develops, he is lacking. And when he is born, he is either underweight or is susceptible to diseases. So ensuring those around the mother, ensuring that they are making the conducive environment is also ensuring that the baby who is developing is also getting a conducive environment for growth and development. Sometimes diseases also have a critical role to play. If a mother is sickly, definitely the baby also will also experience the same. So that is why it is very critical that those of us who are around this pregnant mother to support that mother psychologically, ensure that her health is good, ensure that her nutrition is good, so that she has that ability to be able to support the developing fetus. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that particular information. Now, let's move a bit forward to a place where the child is now born and is in this world that we are all in, and they get to meet a very unfamiliar environment.
Yes.
And as scientists would say, they rely on senses like touch, sight, and sound to be able to familiarize with this particular environment. What can the people very closest to the child, I'm assuming the parents, the guardians, and maybe the older siblings, if there may be, how do these people who are closest to the child, what can they do to make sure the environment is really conducive for the child? Because many people would say, this is a baby, they don't understand anything, they don't feel anything. So what can they do to really, because you know that's a lie, what can they do to make sure that we really get to have this child in the perfect environment for mental stability?
Okay, you've mentioned a few things like touching, talking, sight, and the like. Those are very critical in feeding the brain in terms of what you talk to your baby. And sometimes we assume that when a baby is born, he has got nothing, he doesn't understand. But that is a good opportunity for you to talk to your baby, especially when you are breastfeeding. You talk to your baby, he will feel loved. He will feel you have given him or her the attention that he requires. He starts familiarizing with the sound of the mother or the primary caregiver, for that matter, who is taking care of him. He is also familiarizing with the sounds in his environment. In terms of touch, when the baby grows and is able to touch things, he starts developing a sense of understanding or discriminating the different texture. He will realize that some objects, when you touch them, they are hot and they will burn you. So he starts learning and keeping distance. There are those that when he touches, they are smooth. Others are rough. So the brain gets to know that, distinguish the different objects, the different textures, and all that because of that touch. In terms of talking again, as children grow and you talk to them, they talk to you, you are helping them to acquire vocabulary, naming objects in the environment. That helps the child now starts understanding his or her environment and gaining more vocabulary. In terms of sight, when they are very young, providing brightly colored objects is very critical to help the child admire and appreciate the environment and the objects and try to reach out to them. That helps the eye-hand coordination, but also in terms of use of his fine motor skills, he also refines them. So as those of us around the child, the caregiver, the primary caregiver, the parents, the siblings, the grandparents, and whoever who takes care, and the father, of course, many times we talk about all this around the child. We forget the father. So we are supposed to provide children with stimulating materials that can help them use their senses or stimulate their senses in terms of what they touch, what the sounds they hear in the environment, and what they see. And that is feeding the brain to be able to discriminate in terms of maybe sizes, texture, in terms of the different sounds. So that is very critical for us to be able to support that child.
All right.
Yeah.
And then it gets to a point where the child goes to school.
Yes.
Now they are mingling with other people. And of course, when many people hear of ECD as a word, they kinda bias to that place where the child joins school, and that's why we had to begin with home before school, and so many people associate ECD with school, and there are teachers involved. There are actually professionals who have been trained in early childhood development, and of course there are children who have not been trained in the same. They are the people who are being taken care of, and they come from different places, and therefore when a community of humans come together, they are bound to exchange a few things from each other and to each other at the same time. So there are traits, both negative and positive, that spread from one child to another. How would you advise, and how, as an expert in this field, how are we supposed to handle our children in schools, especially, to make sure that, and in other gatherings as well, to make sure that they spread the positive traits and not the negative ones, even as they interact, which is also very crucial to their growth?
Thank you very much, Martin.
All right.
There is something that we tend to confuse when we talk of ECD, that is early childhood development, which encompasses issues to do with health, the children's development, the children's nutrition, the children's early learning opportunities, and we tend to confuse it with pre-primary education, because when you talk of ECD, everybody thinks of pre-primary education, the education component. But coming back to your question about the role of pre-primary school teachers in supporting children in terms of shaping their behaviors and discouraging them from negative behaviors. There are many ways teachers can use to help children acquire positive behavior. One is to observe what children are doing that are positive and recognize that, appreciate and reward. Sometimes when they do negative things, for example, they are making noise in class, for example, instead of telling them, stop making noise, you can always be positive and say, I now want us to listen and we start learning. You see, you are telling them the same thing. Why you should be able to use the positive way is also to help them to learn how to use positive ways. They would also want, if you want them to be polite, they would want to hear you use polite language. For example, excuse me, can I pass? Oh, thank you. Today you are early in class. These are little things that help children learn that it's good to be polite. It's good to appreciate others. Oh, today your uniform is nice. Oh, you have tied your shoelaces well. These are little things that can help children associate positive behaviors with good rewards, rather than, many times it's like we shout. Yesterday I told you to tie your shoelaces. Today you have again come. No. Can you check something that is positive and then you appreciate in that child? So many times it's our responsibility as teachers around children to be positive, to observe what children are doing that is positive, reward that, and then gently guide them on behaviors that you think are not correct, and in a way that is not hurting them, but also helping them to direct. Another way is to encourage children or create forums where children can be discussing about the behaviors they have observed and how they affect others. You know, it's easier to talk about the behavior, your behavior. It's easier for me to talk about, no, he doesn't tuck in their shirt, even when I don't tuck in my shirt. So when they share about certain behaviors which they think are good and certain behaviors that they think are bad and how that can be reduced, it helps them now be able to see, you know, they reflect also, they know, oh, that's what I've been doing. They start changing. So teachers have to be creative enough and look for ways that help children gently move from negative behaviors to positive behaviors based on what they hear the teachers saying and all those around them, and also how they are corrected towards those positive behaviors and eliminating the negative behaviors.
All right. Unfortunately, time is working against us. I want us in the next 30 seconds before we conclude with the conference that we are looking forward to have. There are issues in this society about confidence, and I'm sure you've touched a bit as you talked about how you're supposed to handle kids. Low self-esteem is something that we are seeing in so many adults nowadays. What can we do to make sure that the future generations are much more confident?
We have to start early. Anything that you want to see change at an older age must be started early. Things to do with confidence also points back to how these children were appreciated or not appreciated, because many times if you appreciate the child and you reward and you commend their good behaviors and all that, they will develop confidence. They know even mom knows I'm good at this. They will continue doing that. But every time you scold a child, you compare them. You are not like your sister. You are not like your brother. You see, it's exerting. You are killing that positive, that self-esteem. And that person now grows doubting whether he can make it or not, because I'm not like my brother, I'm not like my sister. So let us inculcate the behaviors that we would want to see our children when they grow up. Let us encourage behaviors that we would want to see when they grow up.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. As we wind up, in another 30 seconds, you've had a pre-conference in Turkana, I believe, and you told me that you now have the conference coming up in July on ECD. Kindly tell us about that and what your expectations are even as we wind up.
Thank you so much. We are planning for the 5th National ECD Stakeholders Conference that is going to happen in July from 17th to 19th. And it's going to happen in Turkana University, Turkana County. And the theme for this year's conference is From Policy and Evidence to Action. And we are expecting to have delegates from academia, from researchers, UN agencies, the government, both national and county governments, to come to discuss on how best we are going to transform now from policy into action. We are going to use evidence that has been generated to ensure we are changing the lives of these children. When we look at systems in Kenya, how are systems in terms of governance in early childhood, policy in early childhood, multi-sectoral coordination and collaboration in early childhood? How is financing happening? So these are some of the things that we expect to take center stage in this conference, and we are having the conference in Turkana, and I want to encourage and invite as many people as possible to come. Those who believe in children, those who have good ideas that can support children during the early stages of development. Let us meet in Turkana next month, so that we can discuss issues that can affect children, and we make sure we change our country to make reference to Kenya as a country that is focusing in early childhood.
Amazing, amazing.
Thank
and
you.
I hope our head of news, he comes from Turkana. He's called Laban Shaban.
Wow.
I hope he's going to make a way for us to come one of those days and cover the event and be part of this positive change.
Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Daktari, for joining us in this conversation tonight.
Thank
we
you.
really appreciate.
Thank you so much.
All right, that is Dr. Teresa Mwoma, ECD Network for Kenya, National Coordinator and Senior Lecturer at Kenyatta University. From policy and evidence into action. I love that. We take a short break. We'll be right back in sports news. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. And as I promised you a few seconds ago, we are back with sports news. Football Kenya Federation Premier League giant Tusker will be eyeing to bag the 2023 Mozart Bet Cup after ending the season on disappointing note, losing the title to Gor Mahia when they take on Kakamega Homeboys on Saturday at Moi Sports Center Kasarani. The two teams are set to battle for the FKF Cup trophy that comes with a 2 million Kenya shillings cash prize and a chance to represent the country in the CAF Confederation Cup. Lead to Kitale for the second leg of the Diamond Trust Bank Golf Tournament set for this Saturday, with the tournament expected to attract more than 200 golfers who will compete for the prize at the famous Par 72 golf course, which is one of the oldest courses in the region. The Kitale tournament marks the second series in the DTB's Bank With Us tournaments this year, with the first tourney held at the Sigona Golf Club in April. One thing that is very evident from this bulletin tonight and from our conversations, it is time to act wherever you are, whatever positive change you think you need on the society, be it climate justice or empowering our children, empowering our youth, empowering the next generation. The time to act is now. We've come to the end of the conversation tonight. Join our news team again at 6:30 tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. for Mizizi Weekendy and 9 p.m. for Weekend Live. This is where we come to a halt. It's been slightly more than an hour of information of what's happening in the country and beyond. Our sign language interpreter goes by the name EVELYN LANGAT. My name is MUTEGI K. Martin. Blessings.